guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me today. It is time for part 2 in my eyeshadow series. For those of you that are new here, in the month of May I am talking all about eyeshadows, my very favorite mainly eyeshadow palettes. And today we're going to be talking about one that has been a favorite of mine for years, and it is the Tartelette In Bloom palette. Now this palette is one of my very favorite higher end eyeshadow palettes. This one retails for $46 on both Ulta and Sephora's website. This has been out for quite a few years. I've had mine for I think 2 or 3 years now. It's been out for a while, but definitely don't overlook this one with all of the new palettes that are constantly coming out because I love this palette. So let's go through and talk about what I love so much about this one. First off, let's talk about the packaging. I know that mainly the most important thing is the performance of the eyeshadows inside, but I am definitely someone that appreciates good packaging, and this is probably one of my favorite eyeshadow packaging situations that I even own. I love the packaging of this. I think it is plastic, but it's a very sturdy plastic case, and it has this really nice sturdy mirror in here that is just very, very clear, very, very large. I love the feel of this. It opens and closes very easily. You definitely can feel that this is a high-end palette when you are using it. Again, I know packaging is not the most important thing, but I love the feel of this palette. I love traveling with this palette because it is so sturdy. I feel it's very, very safe to take with me when I travel. I just really love it. Not to mention, I mean, just look at the gold and this beautiful kind of watercolor painting that we have going on here on the front. I just love looking at this palette. Every time that I open it up, it brings me joy just because it is so beautiful. Now let's go ahead and look at the shadows inside. You can see everything in here is pretty neutral and basic, so if you are not into neutral eyeshadows, you definitely won't enjoy this palette. But if you are someone that loves just very natural kind of neutral looks, then I think this is a perfect palette for you. I love that you get a good range of tones in here. You have some really good lighter shades here, and then you also have some mediums and some very, very rich, intense dark shades in here as well. I also love that you have a couple different finishes in here. Mainly this is mattes. I think you get 9 matte shades in here and you get 3 shimmer or metallic shades. But I am okay with that. I still think this palette is very, very versatile. The shimmers that you get in here are absolutely standout, so I think that you can, like, I don't mind that there's not more shimmer shades in here because the ones that are included are so versatile. But I love the mattes in here. They're very, very rich from, I mean, all the way across. I think the lighter colors are very rich for highlighting your brow bone or for setting your lid. The medium tones in here are great transition shades. They work so well in the crease or even all over the lid. And then these darker shades here are just so pigmented and rich. One thing I love about this is the way it's set up. If you are someone that loves things to look visually organized, I think you'll really appreciate this palette. You definitely can go in here and mix and match things, but I just love how it looks, how it's set up. So let's go through and swatch these. Let's start with the first row. We have the colors Charmer, Jetsedder, Rocker, and Smoke Show. I love this color Charmer. This is kind of their white shade in here, but it's definitely more of a soft white. It's not stark at all, but it is such a beautiful shade for setting your brow bone. If you want your kind of eyebrows to really stand out without looking too over the top or intense or glittery, this is such a great shade to do that. It's very, very rich in pigment for being a lighter, like a lighter tone shade without being too stark. I don't know, it's just perfect for the brow bone. Next, the color Jetsedder. This is just your cool tone transition shade. I love using this as a transition shade when I'm doing something a little bit cooler on my eyelids. I'm actually wearing this today. I have a little bit cooler toned look going on, and that is what I'm wearing in my, like, starting out in my crease in my transition. Next is the color Rocker. This is such a beautiful, it's very lightly, I wouldn't call it metallic, but it's just a very light shimmer that's just such a very interesting kind of cool toned bronze color. I love using this just all over the lid, buffed out into the crease with something really brightening on the inner corner. And then last we have the color Smoke Show. This is a really interesting, it's almost a black, but it has a little bit of charcoalness to it. I think it's really great for defining your lash line or just smoking things out on the outer V or in the outer corner. That's usually as deep as I go with my eye looks, but if you do like really dark, kind of vampy, intense looks, you definitely could use this or the shades below it to really get a nice, deep, rich, kind of bold, traditional, smoky eye. On to the second row, we have the colors Flower Child, Smarty Pants, Firecracker, and Activist. Starting with Flower Child, this is just your kind of bone colored, skin tone colored if you have medium to light skin tone shade. I love using this to kind of set my eye primer or prep my lids, but because it is very rich, if you just want your eyelids to look very nice and airbrushed, you could use this all by itself with some liner and lashes and look fantastic. Next, the color Smarty Pants is probably my most used transition shade in here. It's a little bit warmer than the one above it, than Jetsedder. I use this all the time. It's the perfect transition color. It's just warm enough without being too warm if I'm not wanting my eyes to look extremely warm. Then we have the color Firecracker. This is such a beautiful traditional bronze that's not too red. A lot of bronzes, I mean, I don't mind bronzes looking a little bit warm and red on my eyes, but if I don't want that, I find that this is one of the few bronzes that I put on my eyelids that doesn't go red on me. I don't know. Does anyone else have that problem? But I love this color. Very beautiful in the summertime, all over the lid. Then we have the color Activist. This is probably one of my favorite colors to use if I want to do a powder liner, which I do sometimes do because I just find it gives a really nice soft effect. I love using this because it has such rich pigment in it, but it's just that perfect brown that's almost black but still kind of soft. I don't know. I love dark browns, and this is definitely a really great dark brown. This also works really well just kind of smoked into that outer corner of your eye or smoked into your outer V just to darken things up. And again, you could use this kind of all over your lid if you really want to go for like a traditional smoky eye. So the last row here we have Funny Girl, Sweetheart, Rebel, and Leader. Probably one of my all-time favorite eyeshadows is this one right here in the corner, Funny Girl. I love this shade. It is the most perfect lid shade I have ever used. And I have a lot of favorite lid shades, but this is definitely, I think, my very favorite. I love the color of this. It is so perfect. It's not overly bright, but it's the perfect, like, amount of shimmer. It's the perfect color. It's like golden, but also a little bit taupey and a little bit champagne. I just really, really love this. Every time I wear this on my lids, like, it stops me in my tracks that how good it looks, which rarely happens when I do my eye makeup, but every time I wear this, I just think, wow, that is so beautiful. And I love that because it has kind of a couple of different undertones to it, you can pair this with pretty much anything. I mean, this would go with anything else, not just in this palette, but in any other palette that you own. I would say the only thing that I would do to improve upon this palette is add one more of these, because I know this is the color that I'm getting the closest to hitting pan on, and I will be so sad when I hit pan, because the rest of the shadows, although I've used them quite a bit because they're so pigmented, I just have a hard time seeing myself going through these, but I definitely will use up this shade. And I don't know about you guys, but I hate having to buy a whole new palette because one eyeshadow is gone. But this is definitely, if there's any palette that I would be willing to do that for, it would be this one, because I love this shade that much. Does anybody know if Tarte offers an individual shadow in the color Funny Girl? Because I would be all about buying that. Next in here we have the color Sweetheart. I don't use this color super often, but the few times I have used it is very beautiful. If you like kind of that dusty pink look in your crease, this is a perfect kind of dusty mauvey pink transition shade. I do think that look is beautiful. I just don't do that very often. I don't know why. Next we have Rebel. This is just a perfect warm brown. I love that this has like a touch of terracotta in it, but it's still kind of a rosy, almost purpley toned medium brown. I love using that to deepen out the outer V if I want a warmer look. And then last we have the color Leader, another favorite of mine in here. In the pan it looks a little bit more red, but I would say it has a little bit more of like a purple kind of mauve undertone to it. Very, very rich. Such a pretty color if you want to like deepen things out in the outer V, but keep things very, very warm. I absolutely love that shade. I did use this palette on my eyes today, and I'm going to kind of walk you guys through what I did. Started off with that color Flower Child and just kind of buffed that all over the lid just to prep things and set my eyelid primer. Then I went into the color Jetsedder, which is kind of that cool tone transition shade, and I just started buffing that into my crease. I like to kind of concentrate that on the outer corner of the eye and then just kind of work it in towards the middle. I don't go too far in because I have smaller eyes. Then I took the color Rocker and I just started packing that on with a more flat shader brush and packed that on just to the outer half of my lid. Then I took my finger and I applied the shade Funny Girl. I love using this one with my finger. It definitely applies well with a brush as well, but I'm just someone that uses my finger generally with like 80% of the shimmer shades I put on my lids. I just like the control that it gives me. But again, I love the shade. It never has failed me. Then to add a little bit of definition to my lashes, I went into the color Smoke Show, and with a dry kind of flat angled brush, I just kind of started lining my eyes with that. I like to just start right at the lash line and then just kind of go back and forth over it just to kind of soften up that line and kind of blur it out a little bit. Then I like to take that same brush and wet it with a little bit of setting spray and dip back into that same Smoke Show dark color. And then just right at the lash line, I'll kind of apply that as a liner just to really deepen things up right at the lash line, but you still kind of have that blurred effect on top of it. I love doing that. I think it's a really great technique if you're wanting to line your eyes but want it to look really soft and natural. Then for my lower lash line, I went in with the color Rocker, and I just kind of packed that on my lower lash line and just blended it out back and forth with a kind of flat shader brush. And that's the look that I created today using this palette. One of my favorite looks from this palette. I don't often wear cooler tone looks, but if I'm wanting kind of a neutral cool tone look, this is probably the palette I 99% of the time will reach for, because it just does that so perfectly. And I'm kind of loving that for a change, because I feel like I've kind of been stuck in this warm, ready bronzy eyeshadow rut lately, which I like the idea of kind of breaking out of that and trying something different. But I also love creating warmer looks with this. Again, I cannot recommend this palette enough. I think quality wise, I love Tarte shadows. I know some people have said that they don't love the formulation of Tarte shadows, or have said that they're a little bit harder to blend. I don't find them difficult to blend. I think you definitely have to go in with a softer hand and kind of build things up. Otherwise, I think things could get a little bit tricky and you might have trouble blending out some of that pigment because they are so rich, and they aren't quite as softly pressed as some other eyeshadow formulas that I love, such as Anastasia's formula or ColourPop's matte formulas. I'm talking specifically about the matte. But I really love Tarte shadows, and I think this palette in particular is just such a good one if you love neutral looks. I know that these palettes are a little bit pricey. I mean, $46 for 12 shades. I mentioned just the other day you can get, I think for $16 or $18 you can get a ColourPop palette, which are good quality. I'm not taking away from ColourPop, but if you're looking to invest in a higher end palette, if you appreciate good packaging and fantastic quality across the board and love your neutrals, then I think this palette would be right up your alley. Let me know if you guys have some higher end palettes that you would recommend. I'd love to hear what you guys love. Maybe there are things that I also love, or things that maybe I'd be interested in trying out. Also, let me know if you guys have tried out the Tartelette In Bloom palette, what your thoughts are. I absolutely love this palette. I hope that this was enjoyable for those of you that love eyeshadows like myself, or for those of you that are maybe looking at kind of investing into some eyeshadow palettes or interested in building up your collection. I'm hoping that this is helpful for you. I definitely would stand behind this palette 100%. I love it. It is definitely one of my top favorites. That is it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. If you guys want to see what other palettes I have coming up to recommend, then definitely hit that subscribe button. I'd love to have you guys back here, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.